when people are against the dollar, it usually comes in a couple different flavors. One is they associate the dollar with U.S. power, and so they want that diminished. Or they take that other approach of say, I want good things for the United States, including a vibrant industrial base, and the dollar policy is kind of currently against that. So there's different things of what it actually means to be kind of pro or anti-dollar. But I do think that framing of kind of pro-America by embracing Bitcoin is probably going to be a narrative that we're going to hear for a while. If even some meaningful percentage of these policies go through, if they take a more positive view on Bitcoin mining, if they decide not to sell some of the assets that they have, even if they don't do some of the more outlying type things.
Renowned macro analyst Lyn Alden notes that a lot of people have been turning their back against the US dollar. According to her, there are two main reasons for this. First, some people think that the dollar makes the US too powerful, and they want to reduce that power. Second, other people think that the way the dollar is managed now is bad for the US, especially for keeping strong industries. However, Alden believes that we will start hearing more about the idea that supporting Bitcoin is a way to be pro-America. This will happen if some policies, like catering to Bitcoin miners, are put in place. She believes that such changes will make people think more positively about Bitcoin in relation to the US. Let's now listen to Lyn Alden's recent interview with Blockworks. Please give this video a like to show your support and subscribe for your daily dose of crypto news. We hope you enjoy. Before we continue with the rest of the video, do check out daily 5-minute crypto newsletter with all the latest crypto and Bitcoin news. It's a fantastic analysis of on-chain crypto data and breakdowns, and the best part is it's absolutely free. They'll cover expert predictions, breakdowns of on-chain crypto data, and any breaking news you need to know, all in a nutshell. Click the first link in the description and enter your email to join over 50,000 others in becoming a better crypto investor right now.
Right now, because the dollar is the reserve currency system, the whole world wants our assets. They bid up the value of our assets and our currency. That makes our import power pretty strong and makes our export power kind of weak. And so we export dollars to the world through trade deficits. And now we have a number of officials that are not happy about that. So Trump has made a big deal about that. The vice president pick Vance has we talked to Jerome Powell in Congress in the Senate about that, basically the hollowing out of the industrial base because of the structure of the system. And so one of the options in general is that the United States could do kind of a strategic devaluation of the dollar. They could, and one of the mechanisms to do that is to accumulate reserve assets. And then, more recently, there's rumors around that they might add Bitcoin as a reserve asset. That's fairly uncommon. El Salvador has done that to a certain degree. It's not something you see. It'd be considered pretty unusual policy among current central banks. One of the easiest mechanisms for them to do that is that the United States already has something like 1% of Bitcoin. They already have over 200,000 coins from various asset seizures, and they periodically sell them into the market. So the lowest hanging fruit, if they wanted to do something like that without being particularly kind of dramatic, is to say, well, we already hold these assets, stop selling them and transfer them over to where we keep our reserves. So that's one option. The other option is just to outright accumulate them. That would obviously have more impact on price, more impact. It'd be a little bit more of a sensationalist type of event. But in general, I do think that the likelihood of some of these kind of unusual policies, either the U.S. deciding to accumulate reserves in general, or get more into the weeds on currency differentials with some of our trading partners, I think that the likelihood of that kind of increases if we get a Trump presidency.
Yeah, I don't think it can be understated just how different and unique these potential policies are that could be coming. You've been a long-term Bitcoin bull on some more long-term reasons. Like, where does that sit in your grand thesis? Like, is this sort of the end game, or do you see this as like a stepping stone to like outright reserve currency, or where do you feel like this sits in that grand story of Bitcoin?
Well, so developed markets holding it as a reserve asset is pretty far along the line of success. I mean, overall, the size is also, getting as big as gold or getting as big as kind of the monetary basis of leading countries, or getting bigger than any stock market capitalization. Those are also milestones. So overall, that does kind of continue the thesis of Bitcoin becoming increasingly one of the most attractive monies you can hold in the world. I mean, basically, the average developing country currency increases in supply at double digits per year. Like in Egypt, for example, is over 20%, and that's not super uncommon. In developed markets, on average, it's 6 to 9%. Obviously, the kind of the pandemic era blew that out to some extent, but over the say the past 50, 60 years, you're generally looking at 6 to 9% supply growth. Gold is something like 2% or less, depending on the given year and the given production cycle, but it's pretty remarkably low at between 1 and 2%, usually around 1.5%, but going as high as 2. Whereas Bitcoin has no long-term supply growth after its initial distribution cycle. It's already lower than gold in inflation as kind of a percent of supply growth now, and I think it's still kind of below its total addressable market for where it's going to get. Um, there's also just in general, like I think that if we removed those factors from the equation, I think probably by late 2025 will be an upcycle in global liquidity, and so that should over like all else being equal be good for Bitcoin.
Lyn Alden explains that the US dollar is strong because it is the main currency used worldwide. This makes it easy for the US to buy things from other countries but hard to sell its own goods. Some US officials think this is bad for American factories and jobs. To fix this, they might make the dollar less valuable by saving assets like Bitcoin. The US already has a lot of Bitcoin from confiscations, and there are rumors that it might start keeping this Bitcoin instead of selling it. If Trump becomes president again, these unusual policies are more likely to happen. If more countries start using Bitcoin as a reserve asset, it would be a big step forward for Bitcoin. Alden also believes that Bitcoin doesn't increase in supply as much as regular currencies, making it a good thing to own. She believes that by 2025, Bitcoin will benefit from global financial trends. Now let's go back to Lyn Alden's interview.
There are these one-time events or narrative changes that can come into play, because one way you can think of Bitcoin is if you look at all the properties, they're obviously very attractive, but then what people do is they kind of have like this risk weighting associated. They're like, well, what is the percentage that the U.S. goes after it, or what is the percentage that there's some sort of big technical issue with it, or what's the percentage of XYZ happening? And so Bitcoin is kind of priced like an option in that sense, where anything that kind of removes some of that that tail risk can have a pretty big impact on the price, because if you say, well, it's already great, but I was worried about this tail risk, and if that tail risk either goes away or gets cut in half, well, then the remaining investment's extremely undervalued. So all of those things are favorable. In general, I start with conservative assumptions of not expecting these kind of like idiosyncratic events, and would be positioned just for a more typical cycle. But then if those events happen, they generally help increase the odds that you're going to outperform to the upside. So the way I'd argue it is probably supportive of the United States, not necessarily the dollar per se, because we talked before about how, for example, like Vance would argue that potentially the dollar reserve status is deindustrializing our manufacturing capability, which is something I've been writing about and talking about for years. There's a case to be made that the current structure of the dollar system, while it does have benefits, those benefits are not evenly distributed. So if you work in government or Wall Street or certain areas like that, you benefit from the U.S. being this big dollar export business. Whereas if you work in manufacturing, and increasingly, even if you work in defense, where you're worried about your national security of your own supply chains and things like that due to so much deindustrialization, then you're kind of on the wrong side of that. And with his book and everything, Vance is kind of focused on the Rust Belt, the deindustrialization of the U.S. And so I think that there's a case to be made that while adding reserves in that period of time is weakening of a currency typically. In the longer arc of time, it helps kind of protect it against kind of big weakness. But I think moreover, it just helps the United States as a whole and people that live here. So I think that's probably what the argument that they would make. When people are against the dollar, it usually comes in a couple different flavors. One is they associate the dollar with U.S. power, and so they want that diminished. Or they take that other approach of say, I want good things for the United States, including a vibrant industrial base, and the dollar policy is kind of currently against that. So there's different things of what it actually means to be kind of pro or anti-dollar. But I do think that framing of kind of pro-America by embracing Bitcoin is probably going to be a narrative that we're going to hear for a while. If even some meaningful percentage of these policies go through, if they take a more positive view on Bitcoin mining, if they decide not to sell some of the assets that they have, even if they don't do some of the more outlying type things.
Lyn Alden believes that Bitcoin's price depends a lot on risks like the government banning it or other big problems. If these risks get smaller, Bitcoin's value goes up because people see it as safer. She usually expects normal situations without big changes, but if something unusual happens, it can make Bitcoin worth more. Alden also points out that some people think liking Bitcoin means you are against the US dollar. However, Bitcoin can actually help the dollar by making the financial system stronger. This could be important in political debates, where supporting Bitcoin might be seen as supporting the dollar, not opposing it. Given the potential for Bitcoin to both challenge and complement the US dollar, how do you see it affecting the global financial system over the next decade? Share your thoughts in the comments section below, and continue the discussion. If you found value in this video, don't forget to give us a thumbs up, and subscribe to our channel for more insightful discussions on cryptocurrency and finance. Thanks for watching. We hope to see you again. For more Daily Dose Crypto news, check out these 2 awesome videos on your screen. Click now and we will see you on the next video.